Here we go. Kia ora koutou. Ko Kati toko ingoa. As Wotsi said, my name's Kati. I'm not from here, which you can probably tell by Mark's introduction, but also by my accent. And I thought, speaking to New Zealand rural professionals, I'll give you a bit of a background of where I come from so you can connect to my people and my land. This is the River Inn, I-N-N, which is the river I grew up next to. The River Inn runs through 3 countries, so imagine what it takes to manage that, rather than running through 1 region or 2 regions or across catchment. It runs through 3 countries. It starts in Switzerland at the bottom here, and then runs through Austria. When it comes into Germany, just here, this is where I grew up, which is close to Munich in the southern part of Germany, and then it drains into the Danube. So rivers are very dear to me. I grew up next to this river, which is an old braid of the River Inn. You can see my dad and my son there looking for beavers. So beavers have lived in Germany, in this part, in the river systems for centuries. Then they nearly became extinct because they were hunted for their fur and their excretes, which were used for healing powers. Fun fact, monks used to eat beavers because they were considered fish. So on Fridays they could eat beavers. They could eat beavers, they were considered fish. Here's a video. This is working of a beaver, which is just literally right next to our house. They've just multiplied. They've taken over the landscapes again. They get around 20 to 30 kilos in weight. They have been around for 50 million years. They're widespread throughout Eurasia for a long time, and then have almost been completely exterminated across that time because people love their hats and the furs. And so this is just in the evening. They're nocturnal, so they come out and they start to wreak havoc. So here on the left-hand side, for example, 400 apple trees were felled in this particular orchard. So as you can imagine, not everyone is happy to have these beautiful mammals in our vicinity. And these are just really old trees, oaks, and any kind of tree. And in the bottom right, you can see some fodder, some maize, so they don't just take trees, they take maize as well. So you plant your crops alongside of the river and the critters come along. And so essentially they say everything up to 20 metres to the side of the riparian area belongs to the beaver, and we here are arguing about 5-metre margins. This is another video of my husband when we went over to visit a couple of years ago. We were pulling out the beaver-damaged trees. This is essentially a full-time job for my dad these days. We pull them up for the winter in our Unimog, just trying to get them up to have wood for winter. But it's not big damage to us. My parents own this tiny lifestyle block, so this is just a hobby, and we embrace the beaver. But we do have the orchard up here as well, so they do cause quite a lot of damage in our orchard. So we have to protect the trees from when they're young, and we lose them regularly. We just lost a 50-year-old walnut tree to a beaver, but so be it. So, and the concerns are plentiful. There's too many tunnels, dams, and lodges hunting the beaver, so a lot of people actually try and hunt them. They're illegal, they're protected legally, so people can't hunt them. There is a warn system with trigger down here, which does a lot of bang, which is similar to what we have in orchards, and they predate on freshwater fish, so if you have any hatcheries along the side, they come and help themselves as well. They undermine irrigation channels and dams, and they build these large cave systems, which you guys might think, well, we have tomo here, and we have the beaver there. And they change around, of course, they move. But there are also benefits to this critter, and I'm sure you're all wondering why I'm telling you this, because we don't even have beaver in New Zealand, but bear with me. There are lots of benefits of having this beautiful mammal in the area. They are biodiversity boosts, they're increasing the water tables, and they are natural landscapers. And so the views are very controversial about whether it's good to have the beaver or not. And so while there are no beaver in New Zealand, we do have other challenges that are equally controversial. And I just like to put it into perspective that the story I'm telling you here is one of many, and that by talking about it and by talking about the pros and the cons, we get a better understanding. And managing everybody's expectations is difficult, but finding a balance of managing a native species with agriculture and urban communities collectively without smashing each other's heads is a skill we need to have, and we need the skill in New Zealand as well. which is what brings me to my today's topic, which is about knowledge sharing that we can use as a tool for freshwater ecosystem restoration at large scales. And when I talk about knowledge sharing, the knowledge, freshwater restoration knowledge is any information or knowledge that rural professionals, farmers, and stakeholders hold about sustainable land use and freshwater improvements. This is part of a 5-year project that was funded by Our Land and Water. This is a screenshot of the website. You guys can go and have a look at it. The project was called Register of Land Management Action. There's a whole other talk. I'm not going to talk about this today. But as part of this research, we found that sharing the knowledge that you guys hold is really important for making change and for encouraging other people to go out and farm sustainably. So I'm going to talk about why storytelling is a suitable mechanism to share knowledge, what restoration knowledge should be shared and how can we share it, who's best placed to share the knowledge, and where you can go to share your knowledge. So first of all, why storytelling? We heard a lot today in the previous talks about data, and we love data. I'm a freshwater scientist, kind of morphing into the socio-ecological role here. We also love data because we can sort and we can arrange it. Oh, and if we feel really creative, we can represent it visually. But really, what we want to do is we want to explain it with a story. So if we put the data together and are able to actually present the information we have in the form of a story, then it's a lot powerful. And the whole is a lot bigger than the sum of its parts. Sorry, someone wanted to take a photo and I already moved on. So why storytelling, and what do I mean by storytelling? We've been telling stories for a long time. Our brains are physiologically and mentally primed for stories. I see some Tafino here potentially. I mean, they've told stories for a long time as part of sharing their knowledge. 36,000 years ago, the first cave paintings, and we move on all the way into modern times where we now tell stories in a more, modern way in terms of photographs or digital media. Storytelling does come in many shapes and forms. It comes oral, transfer visually, which we're very well accustomed to here in Aotearoa, written forms, and then more recently sort of the digital storytelling. But I also mentioned about how stories, we all grew up with them, but our brains are actually firing different triggers when we do listen to a story. So nothing against data scientists, but if we do just present data without a story, our brain only fires into areas, or the neural coupling in those two areas is restricted to those two areas. Whereas if we tell a story or a more creative way, then we have up to 8 or 9 different areas that get used in the brain. And there's a paper on this if you guys wanted to read a little bit more. So this slide is really the nitty-gritty bit of this talk. Why should we share restoration knowledge? So if you're a farmer and you've been restoring your catchment with your group or on your own for the last 15 or 20 years, you spend a lot of money on it, a lot of time, then you've learned a lot. You know what worked and you know what hasn't worked. And in order for others to learn from the mistakes and the hard and the hoops you have to jump through, you have to share that knowledge so that others can learn from your mistakes. You can also lead with examples. We have amazing catchment communities out there that are really good at sharing their story. The Pumahaka Catchment Group in Otago is famous for their storytelling skills. They also have this champion over time that really thrived and loved being the storyteller and leading with example. There's this intergenerational stewardship. So if you share what you know today, others can learn from it and we can pass it on into the future. And so we're not just thinking on what you are doing today, but in up to 100,000 years. We can gain long-term momentum, which is now that we can shorten the lag time, which is great news, but it's still in groundwater particularly, and restoration can take centuries. We've been degrading our catchment for centuries, and restoring them will take time. So we need that long-term momentum. We need the communities and people get together, the funders, to keep restoring our catchments. Community cohesion is why you should be sharing your knowledge. It brings us together. This is not just for restoring freshwaters, but by communities coming together and through planting events or seed collection events. We're forming resilient communities that are really important for other challenges such as climate change as well. And then there's the reinstating the social license to operate, which there's a really cool research here that I found today as well, which is paper there I highly recommend. It's about social license to farm and good farming. So this aligns a lot with the research we were doing. Everything I'm telling you today is on the Our Land and Water website as well. You can find scientific papers that back this up. So I went out and spoke to a few catchment communities. It was fun. We had lots of cups of teas. They thought, what is this German chick coming here wanting us to be creative? I got out some sticky notes and they were just looking at me going, oh my God. But we had a really good time. 5 different groups and 4 in the South Island and 2 in the North Island. And we sat down and we talked about what knowledge we should share. And some of these quotes, they are direct quotes. To affect change, you need to show what worked and what didn't. So when people talk about the restoration that they've done and they share that knowledge, they need to include successes as well as failures. So any actions that worked or that didn't work, anything. We planted 5,000 plants last weekend, but over the summer we didn't water them or we didn't weed them. So 3,000 died. So that's a knowledge that, we need to share. Everyone knows this now. You need to look after your planting for up to 5 years. It's not just a matter of plonking the plants in the ground. You actually need to look after them. But that is knowledge that we could have shared so much earlier and avoided so much pain. It's the funding that groups have received or not received. It could be anything about social and demographic issues. So the Rangitikei Catchment group who we worked with, they said they really would like some younger people to be part of it. I spoke to the Nelson Mahitahi group. They also wanted younger people as part of their catchment groups. They have their planting events on a Friday at 1 p.m. and I'm like, maybe shift it to a different day. Maybe younger people would come. They're not at school or somewhere else. There's survey fatigue. Yeah, again, the Rangitikei Catchment group, they said we had so many surveys, we just surveyed out, we can't fill in anymore. That's knowledge you need to share. So this is what it looked like. They are the catchment journeys, we called them. So farmers, I created sort of this template, which by the way is also there. You can pick that up, but there's also, I'm going to provide a QR code for you to scan. And you sit down with a group and you work through different challenges of who are they, what do they want to achieve, what are their obstacles. So this particular group had the government as an obstacle. And what they envisage for their land the next 12 months. And so they created this one-pager, which we then pimped and turned into a digital version, and they use that now when they go wherever they have catchment group meetings or they try and share what their goals are. They just have everything on this one page. There's a free template. It's an editable PowerPoint template or Google Slides, so you can download that and take that to a stakeholder engagement meeting if you want to. In terms of who should be the one telling the message, and really it shouldn't be me standing here. It should be a stakeholder or a farmer that stands here to talk to you about this. I had a quick look. There's a New Zealand Land Care Trust website, which you guys might already know about. They have a map of the different catchment groups that they are aware of. And you can zoom into the different areas and you can see, you click on these little dots. Each little dot is a catchment care group of some form. For example, those two here, you can see there's the Mangao Tama Stream and Wetlands Trust or the Puino River Care group. But, there are a lot more. There's heaps of dots, and these are just some screenshots that I took. So when you then look at the entire region, there's 88 just here in this specific region, 23 catchment groups. So all these people hold such a wealth of knowledge in terms of restoration, what they've done. But do they share it? Do they tell us what they know? So to answer the question, who is the knowledge holder? Knowledge is power, but knowledge shared is power multiplied. It's really you guys that are the knowledge holders, and you are the guys that should be sharing what you know. And we did that. We looked at it and we tested it scientifically, and we created some of these stories by catchment groups and passed them on to other groups. And we said, what do you guys think about these stories when you see this? Are you repelled or do you feel inspired? And that's exactly what they said. So it's a word cloud. The bigger the words, the more people said that that's how they felt when they were asked what rural communities, how they described these restoration stories. They thought they were informative, they were inspirational, encouraging. They were farmer-led, so that was a really take-home message. So the communication needs to come from farmers to farmers. They were positive. So it's kind of like a no-brainer that peers are the best messengers. So peer-to-peer knowledge exchange, that was also one of the quotes that one of the farmers said. Restoration works because it's farmers educating farmers, but it's also within forestry group. I spoke to the Forestry Owners Association last week, and they said the same thing. If another forestry company tells them about something, they're much more likely to believe them. And this is also, I found it this morning here on this document, there's a perceived trustworthiness of sources of information about farming. So this is very much related to my talk. And farmers themselves rank the highest, so they do believe, they do trust themselves. So if you're an advisor and you come onto the farm and you're not a farmer yourself, your chances, it's best you become a farmer first and then talk to farmers. So how could knowledge be shared? There's many forms and shapes of how we can share knowledge, especially because there's lots of digital tools. But the simple, most easiest way of sharing knowledge is through photographs, and that's what farmers do. Everyone has their phone out there. They take a photograph. Photo points is a really good way. You take the photo at the same spot every 3 months if you want to, and then you can create a nice time series. So photographs is a really good way. This is the Rangitiki Catchment Group. Again, they've created these billboards where you are in the catchment, so the little red dot shows you where in the catchment you are, and you can see where they collect water quality, and they have some summary statistics on here as well, how many hectares of land they've retired, how many kilometres they've fenced. So slightly more expensive way of sharing your story, but a very permanent way. There's more modern tools such as story maps. There's a QR code. This is a story map I created for this group. You will have to have access to ArcGIS for that. But it's just another way of how you could share your story. And then this is podcasts, which I'm personally really interested in. Now I spoke to some people today about them. I really would like to test how well podcasts work. They pop up everywhere and people love listening to them, but do they actually make change? Do they relate to farmers, or do forestry people relate differently to them? So if you have any money spare, or if you wanted me to test that or wanted to create a podcast, come and let me know. So in terms of how can we bring all of this together, and I spoke to Sue about this just before, where can you share your knowledge? How can we bring that together? There's already many catchment groups that have their own Facebook sites or websites even, but you would have to go to all these individual places to try and find out what they're doing. So a really good way, there is not really an accessible single platform. And this is where the Health and Waterways Register comes in. There's also another pamphlet there for you, which you can look at. This is what the Owl and Water National Science Challenge has funded us to set up. And as part of this register, we have a shared stories site, which collates those catchment stories and the knowledge that the people share at a national scale. So you can then zoom into your area and you can find out whether someone's already talked about something in your catchment potentially or area. And this is just a prototype, so there should be lots more dots really. And then we're going to take this one step further. Who here has heard of the Land, Air, Water Aotearoa website? Yeah, so short for LAWA. So LAWA is the Council Water Quality Monitoring data. It's lots of different data modules, we call them. You can find out your air quality in your area, estuarine health, lake quality. The Can I Swim here is really popular over summer. If you're not sure whether the swimming hole is safe, that's where you can go. And so come June, there will be a new module on there which is called Actions for Healthy Waterways. And so the data that is entered into the National Register will end up on LAWA and publicly portray the stories that these catchment groups have to tell. And so this is just a mock-up of what this could look like. This is an example catchment, the Motueka River near Nelson. And you can search for stories, and you can also search for specific photographs. So how often have we tried to find a photo of riparian planting, dead riparian planting or well-established riparian planting, and we're just trying to find good quality image on the web somewhere. So the idea is that people upload their information on the register, will tag their photograph, and we create this massive photo repository where you can just find New Zealand-specific restoration images. Yeah, and we're coming pretty much to the end of my talk. This is the Catchment Journey template, but you can also offer off the website, and which brings me to our take-home messages, which is really that sharing your restoration successes and failures, so the things that worked and the things that didn't work, is critical in inspiring others to restore. Storytelling is a meaningful tool to share restoration knowledge to enable different views. Rural communities are well placed to be the messenger, so the peer-to-peer knowledge exchange, and that there are many platforms to share your restoration knowledge, but ideally you enter it onto the National Register. So thank you for staying awake after lunch and in a warm room. Any questions? Kia ora. Hi.
How far back are you going with your histories? I'm involved with a Catchment group, which is fortunately able to get access, it's doing research back 500 years.
Yeah.
And that really is the wonderful part of the story.
Yeah.
About migration of birds, tuna. And that I think is as important, particularly if you're trying to sell your story to funders, as the story when my grandfather came along and felled trees.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. I mean, you can start the story wherever you want to. It's a spectrum, right? It's your knowledge that you hold and share. But in terms of restoration, I mean, yeah, and it's just as equally important to capture the degradation that happened, and now we're at a point where we start to restore. So, and that's all part of it, really. Yeah. So you can go as far back as you want when it comes to capturing your story, and there's no limit on time. Any other questions?
Really humanised, or is it?
Yeah. So the best stories are really those often where things went wrong, where people have put in a lot of effort and time and stuff, just like the neighbour's cows escaped, the fence broke or whatever, and then they just trampled it all and feasted on the new plantings and stuff like that. I mean, that's bad luck, you can't really do much about it, but it's those kind of story that humanises them and that people relate to them. So the farmers I spoke to, they didn't just want the positive story, because often on social media you only portray the good things, right? And hey, we're great, and look at us. And many New Zealand farmers, used to get quickly labelled as greenies, so they were quite reluctant to put their head above the parapet. So the finding was that if you have that champion that's really good at doing it, others will follow suit, and actually the ripple effect that they cause is huge, the snowball effect, in getting others to follow suit. Yeah.
What sort of scale are you put in the actions? I have a lifestyle block, can I just put in what I do on my property, or are you looking at bigger scale?
Yeah, so there's two parts to this register that I talked about. So one part, and maybe I have 5 minutes left to just quickly talk about it. You can enter your land management actions into that register. So this covers your planting and the fencing, the stock exclusion and farm management plans. And you enter the data at farm level, but it is only portrayed at catchment scale for confidentiality reasons, and we don't want this tool to be a compliance tool either. So while you as a livestock block farmer can go out and do that, we encourage you to form a collective or a group purely because it saves work, and not every individual farmer would have to go in. Doesn't mean you can't do it. Yeah.
Do you have links to funding? So by region,
Not at this stage, no. This is something that would be part of the groups sharing where they get their funding from. Yes, but good point. Yeah. The Lava platform is planning on putting together something that looks at where you can go to get funding, but because that always will need to be maintained, it's almost better to outsource that to the individual councils or groups, regional areas, to see where you can get funding apart from the national stuff. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? I'll pass on to all of you. Great.
Awesome, thank you.